So now that we've gotten last Sunday's show out of the way, let's get started on the regular shows that I watch. From Wednesday on, starting with American Horror Story Hotel. Now, this is one of the two shows in which I didn't get to talk about for 2 weeks. How to Get Away with Murder. American Horror Story Hotel. You deliver. You're starting to deliver. I was not impressed by the first episode. However, we are now 5 episodes into it, and you are delivering so well, so fantastically, that I don't know how I missed 2 weeks of it. Like, I watched them, and I sat there and I said, how could I skip 2 weeks of this show and also not be able to talk about it? I mean, come on. So, last week's episode was entitled Devil's Night. Now, this is canon. This sort of episode is canon throughout the entire series of American Horror Story, and that is Halloween. Halloween has been in every season. It is a special episode that obviously airs before Halloween, and it is probably one of the creepier episodes of the season. Same thing happened with Freak Show and the first 2 seasons, but now, and the seasons prior to it, but I have to say, now, this episode had a special place in my heart, and I'll tell you why in a little bit, but Devil's Night is probably one of my favorite episodes of American Horror Story that has come out so far. Now, I know this show is going to get picked up for another season, so this will probably change a year from now. But here we are, November 8th, 2015, at 8:25 p.m. I am saying this right now. Devil's Night from American Horror Story Hotel is one of my favorite, is my favorite episode ever. And here is why. The best dinner party ever happened on that night. Now, to preface this, I'm going to say this. I'm going to say that we all know that Evan Peters' character, Mr. March, because I don't remember his full name, but it's Mr. March, the owner of the Cortez Hotel, or Hotel Cortez. He had a bit of a serial killer mentality to him. He built the hotel so that he can kill within the walls, and it was also constructed with enough capability so that he can dispose of and do pretty much whatever he wants to all of his victims. Now, that being said, Devil's Night is his biggest and best dinner parties ever, but it is very exclusive. Now, the beginning of the episode, when Liz was telling John's the cop that's staying there, and Liz is the hotel employee working for the Countess. When Liz was telling John about this dinner party, I thought it was going to be this huge ball, kind of rivaling the fashion show that Trip had a couple weeks before. But no, it is a dinner party with a very select few of people. Now, for those of you who don't know me very well, you're gonna get to know me very well by the end of this explanation, and I'm gonna tell you right now that I am a sucker for how do I say this? I'm a sucker for serial killers. I think they're fascinating. I think, yes, they're creepy as all creepiness goes, but they are, in fact, a fascinating bunch of people. I don't want to grow up to be one. I don't have those tendencies. I also, think that what they did is highly messed up. However, they are a fascinating bunch of people. I've seen documentaries on the worst of them. I've read books on a lot of them. I'm nowhere near a expert on any of them in particular, or on all of them in a broad perspective. However, they are a fascinating bunch of people. And this ties into my villains thing. I love villains. Villains are great. I think they're more characteristically human than than heroes are. However, serial killers are very interesting to me, and they share a very small but special place in my heart. So, how does this tie into American Horror Story Hotel? Well, glad you asked. The best dinner party ever had the following people as its guests: Aileen Wuornos, Richard Ramirez, John Wayne Gacy, Jeffrey Dahmer, and the Zodiac Killer. Now, for those of you who don't know who Aileen Wuornos is, she was lastly portrayed by Charlize Theron in the movie Monster. She was a female serial killer, one of the most prolific female serial killers, who basically lured her victims by being a prostitute, by selling her body and then killing people. So we meet her first in this episode, and she finds out that John's a cop. She doesn't like cops, but a lot of people don't. She's actually the second person we meet in the episode. The first one we meet is Richard Ramirez. Actually, funny line with him, but we'll go back to Aileen because I already started explaining that. But anyway, Aileen tries to lure John into her usual antics, into his room, lead him on for some, pleasure, and turns out he turns the tides on her, handcuffs her to the sink, says he's going to call the cops, but he can't call the cops because it's Devil's Night, and she's a guest. And Mr. March would not be happy if one of his guests were to get arrested again. Then further in the episode, you get to go to the dinner party. Now, the episode starts with Richard Ramirez coming into the hotel. And the funny line with him was now, for those of you who don't know who Richard Ramirez is, he is known as the Night Stalker. And his alias was he went around Los Angeles, and his MO was kind of breaking and entering, and then he would kill and said the devil told him to do it. And then he tattooed a pentagram on his hand, which you got to see in the show. But because he was a B&E type of guy, when Liz handed him the keys to the room that they had given to him, he said, "Come on, I don't need keys." I thought that was funny. I thought that was tastefully done. So we find out that Mr. March is having a dinner party, and John is invited. John is the new guest to the dinner party. Now, he's not a serial killer, but he's a cop, and you kind of get the antic that he's not the best of cops. Not saying that he's a terrible cop, like, oh man, I should have arrested that guy, but oh well. No, he's maybe a dirty cop, and maybe he's done some things that are unsavory enough to get Mr. March's attention. So he's brought to this dinner party. Now, John Wayne Gacy is played by the same actor who played Eastman last week, and he played Twisty the Clown in Freak Show. So I thought that's cool that he's given a lot of these small kind of characters. Um, and I mean, I don't know. I'm sure that they did their research beforehand, but the actors and actress that played each of the serial killers, except for the Zodiac killer, because not a lot is known about the Zodiac killer. In fact, the Zodiac killer had rumored to name himself. So, I mean, for me, the Zodiac killer didn't really do it, but I like that. That's probably why he didn't have that many lines. It was kind of like he just showed up, said something, and then walked out. However, Jeffrey Dahmer was very, very, very creepy, and he was played by the same actor who played the son in Nip Tuck, another great show. But just all of them encaptured. Now, I've never met any of them because most of them are dead and or in jail for a very long time, and I don't feel like going to jail to meet these people, but it seemed like they did their research to capture the personalities of their serial killer type people. And I loved it. I'm sorry, but I loved it. I thought it was done very tastefully, and put in a way where you forgot they were killers and the worst people in real life, but that these are the personalities. It's show business. This is the show business version of them. So you're like, okay, fine. They're serial killers. They terrorized their different they're different they're different from what they were actually like in real life, and they're not really terrorizing. They're not really terrorizing the real life because they're in this hotel. Now, a nice little spin on it is they were able to take their stories and tie them into Mr. March. So Mr. March was kind of their mentor in helping them perfect each of their different crafts. So each of them stayed at the Hotel Cortez, and before Mr. March was able to kill them or they were able to succumb to that of the Hotel Cortez's party or ways, they were embraced by the serial killer owner and creator of the hotel. Now, while this dinner party is going on, they are drinking absinthe, and John is drinking absinthe as well. John Wayne Gacy handcuffs John, the cop, to his chair. So he really has no escape, and he's a cop, so he wants to take all of them to jail, especially probably the Zodiac killer, because then, he gets to solve one of the United States unsolved mysteries, which is who is the Zodiac killer. So the party goes on. They're drinking their absinthe, and as the party is continuing in the upstairs area, Sarah Paulson's character is standing out on the street enjoying Halloween and enjoying a bunch of girls who are drunk in very, very scandalous versions of what would usually be mature and appropriate costumes, i.e. a slutty bee and like a slutty Minnie Mouse or something like. I wasn't really paying attention to that. But anyway, as she's watching them, a businessman walks up to her and tells her why Halloween is such a terrible, disgusting holiday. And he says, I am a businessman. I am here on a business trip. I make my money. I don't dress up in silly costumes. I am a respectable man who does respectable things. And then notices that she is a prostitute and thus takes up on her offer to have some fun. So she gets them all messed up, and and she brings him to the party. Now, what do you do when you have someone completely messed up at a party and send them to a whole bunch of serial killers? Well, I'll tell you. You get a whole bunch of serial killers who get to kill you. And that's what they do in front of John. And John has to sit there and watch as he's handcuffed to the chair. He sits there and watch as a man is stabbed multiple times by John Wayne Gacy, Richard Ramirez, Jeffrey Dahmer, who, those of you who have a weak stomach, I'll play this. I'll play the spoiler. I'll play it. I will. I'll play the spoiler, but those of you who have a weak stomach, please don't listen to this right now. Jeffrey Dahmer they actually show on screen what Jeffrey Dahmer did in real life by making one of his victims, because they bring a victim in for Jeffrey Dahmer. They bring one of his victims in, and they basically recreate what Jeffrey Dahmer did in real life by making zombies and stuff. And it's safe. It's safe. You could start listening again. So yeah, that was kind of creepy. But Dahmer and Gacy and the Zodiac Killer and Aileen and Richard Ramirez, they go to town on this poor businessman that was just looking for a little fun. And John sees the whole thing, and Sarah Paulson's character tries to comfort John and thus sleeps with him, because that's the way it goes. Duh. So that's the best dinner party ever. And I have to say, again, those characters were done remarkably well. Absolutely remarkably well. I was so excited to see some real life added to it. I mean, yes, we saw some of that with Freak Show, and we saw, a little bit of that with the Psych Ward, and I can't remember. For some reason, Coven doesn't really stick out in my mind as much as the other 3 seasons. But the first season, yes, you did get a sense of a little bit of this. But with this, they were able to bring in a little bit of reality. And again, it's difficult to take in if you're really gut wrenched about serial killers. But if you're someone like me who loves serial killers and it doesn't really, I don't want to say loves, but has a profound fascination with serial killers, this episode would have been one of your best, or one of the best to watch. Now, as this epic dinner party was going on, again, best dinner party ever, period. I wish I was there, but not the business guy. I really don't want to be that business guy, but that's what happened. As all of this was going on, now, the episode prior to this, at the very end, as Alex, John's wife, was leaving after serving him with divorce papers, she sees her long-lost son, Holden, and he says, "Hi, Mommy." Now, Alex grabs him and says, "Listen, you're coming home with me." Not knowing that Holden is now a vampire and has not aged ever, but she brings him Holden home, and he says he's thirsty. Now, we the viewers know what he's thirsty for, but Alex, you poor dear thing, a mix of apple juice and orange juice are just not going to cut it for your son. However, the puppy will. Now, I am never, ever a fan of animals dying. On screen, off screen. I am never, never, ever a fan of animals dying. I think it's horrible. I am one of those who will sit there and watch action film upon action film upon action film upon Quentin Tarantino film and just watch buckets of blood being spilled. But the minute you show me a movie with a dead animal in it, or you even suggest it, I need time to prepare for something like that. Now, I was not prepared for that. And sadly, that is what happened. And even sadder, it happened, and I was completely shocked by it. So Holden gets his drink. I'll leave it at that. It wasn't a mix of apple juice and orange juice. First off, why would you mix those two? You don't know what he wants to drink, so you just mixed up two random drinks. Why don't you just ask him, do you want orange juice or apple juice? Or you should remember what your missing son likes. I mean, if you're so distraught about him missing, why are you, like, I don't know. I've never had a missing son or child to, I've never dealt with that. So, but you would think to remember your significant others, or if you have a child, your child's favorite drink. But anyway, Alex discovers what he is, brings him back to the hotel to confront the Countess. And the Countess says, listen, I will give you the deal of a lifetime. You will get to be with your son forever, but you have to become what your son has become. And Alex agrees to do that. However, she does not agree to stay in the hotel. She agrees to live her life, and whenever she wants, she'll get to visit Holden. So the Countess transforms Alex, a reluctant Alex, into becoming the same as Holden, and the same as the Countess, and the same as pretty much everybody who lives in the hotel. So, so that's how everything kind of formulates in that episode. Now, Mr. March and his dinner party seem to have been a figment of John's imagination because of all the absinthe he had drunk, or drank. I think it's drunk. And it's episodes like that where you just sit there and be like, all right, that's it, print it, end of season. Don't need to know anything else. I'm happy. Let's just go. But then American Horror Story has to come out with this past week's episode. Now, Wednesday's episode, again, I'm going to throw up the spoiler alert screen. Only because not just for spoilers, and I'm not going to say this is just a spoiler alert, not just a spoiler alert, but it's also something that is very uneasy. So there's your spoiler alert thing. So again, this is not just a spoiler alert, but this is a if you can't take this topic, just mute me for now, and then come back in a little bit, and you could keep coming in and out just to see where I am. This past week's episode on Wednesday, it's called Room Service. Now, it deals a lot with Kathy Bates' character and how she's having problems with she's dealing with two people that have come into the hotel, and I'll get to that a little later. However, we start off the episode with Alex and her newfound powers of immortality, or her newfound vampirism. And she's throughout the season so far, she's been dealing with the patient. She's a doctor, who also makes house calls apparently, or just makes a house call in this special case. This boy has measles, highly contagious, I think, or maybe not. I don't know. But anyway, has one of those mothers who is not, who does not believe in vaccinations, and apparently she gets yelled at. It's a topic that is very, very political and all that kind of stuff, and I don't need to really get into that whole thing. But anyway, deals with one of those parents that doesn't believe in vaccinations and has a son who is dying. So now with her newfound power, she figures, well, I can save him. I can take matters into my own hands and save him, not with modern medicine or what I've been taught, but with my own blood. So she heals him, but now he has become a vampire. And episode goes on with a couple of other things, and now the bus is leaving for school, and it's Halloween. It's actual Halloween. And you see the boy, his name is Max. You see the boy feasting on his mother. So from there, you do get a sense of something horrible is going to happen. And it does. Max goes to his school, and this is the part where it's going to get a little uneasy for some people. So if you're watching, if you're listening, and if you don't like the subject of these awful, awful events that have been happening within this country or countries anywhere within the world, just, again, please mute. Max goes into school and thus spreads... I'm trying to think of a way to say this without getting too graphic. Thus spreads his current vampirism. It is a tough episode to watch. He starts off by turning his girlfriend. Now, he's a 5th grader, like a 5th or 6th grader, so he's young. And he's got a girl that he kind of likes, and they're doing 7 Minutes in Heaven type thing. It's not actually the game, but that's the type thing. And he turns her, and in doing so, starts a spree of just killing all of his teachers, all teachers and administrators that get in their way. And the SWAT team is called because they think there's a situation going on at the school. And he basically turns his entire class into vampires. The way this was done, I don't want to say tastefully because that's just a bad word, but was done artistically. And Ryan Murphy and the writers of American Horror Story and the producers of American Horror Story, they did not do this. They did this in a way that follows suit to a lot of other shows that have taken on this hotbed of a topic within especially this country. Now, it wasn't particularly a school shooting. There were no shots fired. However, it was a horrific event happening in a school with a bunch of kids. The last time I saw something like this being taken, this topic being taken care of or being shown to this level was Sons of Anarchy and Kurt Sutter. And it's not the only time. There are other instances in television, but one of the more memorable ones that I know and that I will talk about because it is one of my favorite shows is Sons of Anarchy. They did a school shooting, but again, they did it in a way where those of you who knew it was going to happen, you could turn it off, but it was also done in a way where it was not done in a malicious way. It was artistic. It was okay to put on television, even though it's such a sore subject to do. Now, that's it. I'm going to put up this screen. I'll let people know now that you could come back in. You could come back in. So that is what happens with Alex's patient, Max. And all you know now is that the disease is spreading. Not disease, but the vampirism way of life, or disease or virus or blood is spreading. Now, Alex doesn't know any of this, and she goes back to her. She goes back to the Countess and swears her allegiance to the Countess, and thus agrees to forever take care of the Countess's children. And we find out that the Countess takes children that have been neglected. And Alex says, well, I didn't neglect my son. And the Countess said, no, you may have not neglected your son. However, your husband did. And that is, your husband neglected him the one time that your son needed to be watched. Because that's where the Countess was, and she saw someone being neglected, and she took him and told him that I will love you forever. And forever is a real thing. So that was the whole vampire type thing. So now that Alex is a vampire, she is now forever going to take care of her son and the other children that we have seen in the Hotel Cortez throughout the season so far and further on. Now, as all of this was going on, the other story arc that was happening was Kathy Bates' character, I believe her name was Iris, she is just becoming a vampire, and we all know Ramona, who's played by Angela Bassett, is going to somehow get her revenge on Lady Gaga's The Countess for the Countess for killing Ramona's lover way back in the 70s. I mean, that's a long grudge. It's like 40 years. I mean, come on. Just get over it. You're a movie star. So Iris' son brings her to Ramona, and they figure Ramona's mole will be Iris within the hotel. And she's having a hard time. She's going through a lot. She just basically killed herself so that she could be with her son forever. Her son does kind of still kind of like doesn't want her to be around, but at the same time is just like, all right, you know, you're all right, cool. I'll keep you around for a little longer. And obviously wants to get back at the Countess himself for taking on another lover. So in doing so, she learns that Liz, the cross-dressing bartender slash hotel administrator slash you name it, I mean, everybody in this hotel works different jobs. Except for the maid. She just cleans. So you find out his backstory. He was a man who was married to a woman. He is not gay. However, he likes dressing up in women's clothing. And his story started back in the 80s where he was a traveling medical salesman. And he was out with his buddies on a trip. And they were all staying at the Hotel Cortez. And instead of going out to the strip club with them, he decides to stay in and do his usual lady thing. And he felt so alive, which is how you should feel. I feel alive when I do this, when I talk to you, when I let everybody know how I feel about these TV shows. This is when I feel alive. So that's how he feels alive, is dressing up in women's clothes. And he gets some champagne and he celebrates himself. And he says he's never felt so alive. And that's where the Countess comes in. She says, baby, she basically she basically sends the same message that Lady Gaga sends her monsters. She tells him that you are beautiful on the inside and the outside, no matter how you look, and she helps him embrace this new style, and says, "Listen, if you're gonna wear that wonderful fur overcoat, you got to look the part." So she helps him, and then she says you have to scream. So she wants to take him out to a club, and he's not really ready to scream yet. So she says, "Well, why don't we help you yelp?" So she tells him to go get ice for their drinks so that they can party. So he does, and in doing so, he sees the two men that he's on the trip with, and they don't really know about this whole closeted cross-dressing thing, and they're not too happy about it. I mean, not a lot of people would be happy about that kind of stuff, but hey, you start small. The Countess takes care of him, and he then gives his undying servitude to the Countess. She does not turn him, and that's interesting. She doesn't turn him. He voluntarily works for her. And he tells Iris this while they're getting all of this ready. Now, he tells her this when they're looking to make a dish for two hipster, wannabe, kind of like, people. One played by Darren Criss, who is famously known for playing Blake in Glee. Wonderful singer, terrific performer. Not a very good hipster. So they're asking for grilled lettuce and all this kind of stuff, and it gives Iris like this, like, why are people this difficult? Because she's fighting with a little bit of her own demons and her own son and everything like that. And they get theirs in the end. Iris finally snaps and just kills both of them. Kills Darren Criss's character and his girlfriend, wife, or whatever hipsters call their significant others these days. I don't know. I don't really take trips down to Brooklyn all that often. So finding out Liz's backstory is just, it's fascinating because it's a different type of thing. And yes, you're sitting there like, well, Lady Gaga does that all the time. She tells people to be more helpful and to be to be who you want to be. Be whatever makes you happy. And I mean, everybody should do that. And Liz had a particularly hard time with all of that because of what he wanted to be. So, again, two great episodes of American Horror Story. The first of which is my favorite episode that the series has ever released, and the second episode tackles a subject that is very, very difficult for the times that we're in right now. But they tackled it with the same creativity and the same gusto that like shows like Sons of Anarchy have tackled it, and I applaud them. I absolutely applaud them. So thank you so much, American Horror Story, for keeping up with your story, but also for taking care of something in a artistic enough way where it doesn't make me angry that you did it. So, thank you very much. Now,